explain how something like spinal alignment could potentially, in theory, help with, let's say, decongestion or flu-like symptoms?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all about the immune system, right? And what influences the immune system, which one of the things that in physiology in general is the nerve system, meaning that the nervous system containing of the brain, the spinal cord, and the nerves really relays and controls the way you're going to respond to any stimuli, whether it's a virus, whether it's bacterial or any sort of, it kind of governs that response, even on a cellular level. And it's really interesting. And so then stimulating and making sure that the nerve system is not, doesn't have interference and it doesn't have asymmetry or imbalance is really important for its optimal function. So when you have an optimal functioning, more or less, nervous system, it's not just the immune system that's going to function better, but many other systems just begin to function. That's why we say we don't treat things. We don't treat the flu. We don't treat conditions. It's really just allowing your body to function better in an aligned and connected position as opposed to a misaligned and disconnected approach.
So to further dive into this, right? Like when your spine, which we've talked about, your spine is kind of like your body's antenna, and if it's misaligned, it's going to misdirect you in, let's say, your path and your purpose. Can we talk a little bit more about how that correlates, how your spine literally correlates to the energetic flow of where you go in life?
Right. So there's two concepts to this, right? There's the physiological way of how the brain is literally made for you to follow your purpose. There are glial cells that connect the neurons within the cells in the body, in the brain, which is part of the neuroplastic change that takes place, which means that if you're doing something that you love and the activity kind of takes place within something that you love, like me doing this, for example, right?
Yeah.
My brain is literally wiring, it's like, do this more. Anything that you love, it's gonna create endorphins, it's gonna bring you all this good feeling kind of, concept. If you're doing something that's challenging, that's really like life or death situation, and it's just challenging in the sense that you're despaired, you're not inspired, you're despired, more or less, then the brain's like, get away. That's where the amygdala kind of comes in. So that happens on its own. So then there's that concept. And then there is the input to the brain going in and out. If it has those same asymmetrical or imbalanced nerve conductions, it's going to lead to the brain not being clear 100%. So your ability to relate to your outside world is going to be different, because we relate to our outside world through our senses, what we hear, what we see, what we hear, taste and all that. And if those are off, gravitational or just the input or affecting the vagus nerve, all of that is just going to drive you more towards an animal-like behavior, which is going to be lower mind. You're going to be seeking pleasure and avoiding pain, which is lower mind, versus seeking purpose and mission, right? Once you undo those, once the input to the brain and from the brain down is balanced and symmetrical, you allow that clearness to take place. The brain and the body just work in more unison. And I get a sense sometimes when I get a line, I'm just like, okay, I'm on, versus I'm like, I think I'm on. And yeah, it's very different when you begin to function in that state. It doesn't happen right away. It takes time to kind of know the difference, but I know that by allowing symmetry and balance in the mind and in the structure, and you connect both, they function, a lot better. And especially, we meditate after we do the adjustments, and when we bring the skull back to symmetry, the meditations are going to be a lot better, and they're going to be a little bit more clear as well. I could go a little bit more detail into that, but in a nutshell, it might sound kind of confusing. But in a nutshell, that's how
Yeah, no, I think that that's great. I would love to hear a little bit more about, like, because there's so many different ways. It's kind of like the chicken and the egg scenario in a lot of ways about like how you can potentially raise your vibration in order to feel like you aren't in those lower states of being, right?
Yeah.
Some of them being like making sure that you have, which you're going to be talking about, I know, a little bit more next week on your Zoom class about like sleep hygiene and the importance of proper sleep and how that actually is one of the easiest ways to be able to have a clear mind, clear heart, and more aligned sense of being.
Right.
But outside of that, like, you know, in order to be able to continue to live in an alignment, you have to be able to acknowledge where you are misaligned to externally. And I don't know if you've seen like particularly during this time, but like, I don't know if you've seen a potential through line in your patients that you could give like a general piece of advice outside of chiropractic healing that as like a 1 to 2 sentence thing for our audience. Like, this is something that I would look at more into.
Going back into doing what you love and loving what you do, I think right now we all have been more or less forced to go within, literally, and all of that. And a lot of us have had to prioritize things and see what do we really love in our lives, what's truly important. And we've come to realize that things that we thought were important aren't. And to really focus on that, like not live life just like day to day, but we have this one life. And at the end of your life, you want to ask yourself, did I do everything I could with everything that I was given?
That's right.
And you want to be able to say yes. And if that's not the case right now, then change it, and surround yourself with people that are going to support that versus the ones that are going to be like, oh, but
and perpetuate their own fears onto, let's say, like your story, right? Like it can be very profound, and also it could throw you a bit off track too. I find that a lot of people, because there's so much fear right now, the state of where, like the literal energetic state that a lot of people are absorbing is just that. And so it's now more important than ever, number one, with the things that are going on, to take care of your health. I think that if we could, take a step back and go even a step further, it's beyond just making sure that you're living and doing what you love, but actually looking at what is important now that we're no longer needing to necessarily all across the board go into work and commute. We've been in fight or flight modes in a lot of westernized cultures our whole life, and what that means is like waking up, going to work, going through the day, coming back, maybe having like a few hours cushion to do the few things that you think you want, but then you go to sleep, and maybe you're thinking before you go to sleep all about the things that you have to get done because there wasn't enough time to do it. So we've been in this like fight or flight reptilian state of being. How do you take that back? And right now we've been given the opportunity with so much more opportunity in terms of like going within to really think about what's important. And in life, what's important is doing things through the act of love. So really taking note about what love means to you, and honoring that, eating for your vessel, eating right for your vessel, because we're all so beautifully unique. But what it comes down to is having this like high vibration food, because food does have consciousness. Like food hosts a real thing. It's a vibration. So it's eating right for your body type. It's hydrating, it's sleeping well, and it's being surrounded by people that can also be in support of whatever you are in alignment with. Because when you do those things, you will see that things tend to flow so much easier versus getting resistance. I mean, there's that fantastic book that we had talked about like your body keeps the score. Yeah, where it's like your body literally can host and hold trauma for your life if you choose to ignore it. And up until this past year, we haven't had a time as a collective consciousness to embrace these type of things. Now's the time to like do the deep work and face those things, right?
Everybody's going within, everybody's been forced to kind of look into that. That's why there's been this concept of, unfortunately, because people are doing that, they're either getting divorced a lot, or there's all these like marriages, and a lot of people are having babies. Like a lot of people are all of a sudden getting like pregnant. Well, everybody's kind of home, so. But it's really interesting. They also say right now the companies that are going to change the world in the next 20 years are being created right now.
Fantastic.
So this is the time that humanity hasn't gone through, I don't think ever, as a collective. And to really transition, whether it's 5G, I'm sorry, not like 5D, not 5G.
That's a whole nother thing.
5D. And then 6D, whatever that might be, right? Some people are saying that's time travel and all that stuff.
Really, I thought in 5D. Oh, it's 5D is like you can manifest anything, right? Like, and like you can enter any paradigm that you want.
Right.
Okay, cool. So 6D is time traveling. What?
Right, that whole kind of concept.
Cool.
Which, yeah, I know. We'll get there. Yeah, it'll be so cool.